Hey everybody, and welcome to Cognitive Psychology. My name is Alex, and I am going to be your professor this summer. So I'm extremely excited to work with you, even though I know this is an online class, it's over the summer. No one's really looking forward to the online classes over the summer, right? Like usually, like you're doing this because you gotta. Maybe you're trying to catch up with your schedule, or maybe you're trying to get ahead of schedule. Whatever the case may be, I'm so excited that you're here because I kind of like teaching over the summer because I like the pace. I like that it is fast and I like being involved in it. And also, this is the only class I teach over the summer, which means that I can direct my full attention to you and I don't have to have it kind of spread across four other or five other class sections like in a normal semester. So, thank you so much for being here. I am a little bit out of my element here. As you can probably tell, I'm in a hotel. I'm recording this on Sunday, the day before our class starts, and I am actually in Canada right now because my spouse is at a very big, important conference that I am her chauffeur on. I'm her driver. I don't know. I'm hanging out with her. But basically, so this isn't the normal setting you're normally going to see, and I'm hoping that the audio and visual will be a little bit better on the materials that I recorded for this class. So if you're not crazy about the sound here, that's okay. It's going to get better starting next week. So let's get into it. What I wanted to do in this very quick video is kind of walk you through what cognitive psychology is and what to expect from this class, and then show you Plato, show you Blackboard, our learning management software, in case you haven't had any experience with that. I know a couple of you are not actually, or some of you are brand new transfer students to Westfield, so I don't want to assume that you know anything. I want to start from scratch. Let's get into it. So let's talk about the course overview. Let's talk about what cognitive psychology is. Usually whenever I ask this in a classroom setting, for whatever reason, I almost always get the same answers, which is that cognitive psychology is the science of the brain, or it's the science of the mind, or it's the science of thoughts. And usually, because I'm a little bit annoying to deal with in the classroom, I will be pedantic and I will ask students, well, how is that different than other areas of psychology, right? Because no matter what area of psychology you're learning about how the brain works, right? Like even if you don't talk about the brain in these classes, you're talking about how the brain works. You're talking about behavior, you're talking about how we do things. So what is it about cognitive psychology that is specifically different than those other branches of psychology? Yes, we do study the mind. Yes, we do study the brain, but you probably talk about those in your developmental psychology classes too, right? So I think what makes cognitive psychology a little bit different is the kinds of questions that we are asking. So here are some examples of questions that we're going to be asking and answering over the course of this summer semester. So does human memory have a storage limit? Should classes only be 15 minutes long, or is it okay if they are longer than that? Can pigeons identify good art versus bad art? Can they tell the difference between a Picasso painting versus a Monet painting? Um, I say that we're talking about that in object recognition. I think we'll probably be talking about that more in chapter 9, but that's just a note for myself. We'll be talking about why statistics is so hard to understand. Why is it that whenever you have to take Psych 308, a class that I also teach too, so I know how much you love it, why is it that people don't like statistics? What is it that's hard to wrap our head around about that field? And then for bilingual speakers, what language do they think in? So whenever somebody is fluent in both, let's say Japanese and English, do they think to themselves in Japanese, or do they think to themselves in English, or does it change? So those are the kinds of questions that we're going to be answering. Hopefully, at least one of those questions kind of caught your eye and got you thinking, I hadn't really thought about that, because that's what we're going to be looking at all semester. So our textbook, I sent out an email maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago about this, but just in case you haven't seen that email or thought about it yet, our textbook is Cognition by Daniel Reisberg, which you can see right here. This is the 8th edition. However, it is totally okay to get an older edition of these. As long as, well, I was going to say as long as I've taught cognitive psychology, I've used the same textbook, but that's actually not true. But I have used these 3 past editions editions. So the 8th edition, the 7th edition, and the 6th edition. And they're all good. I like them. And honestly, in my experience, there's not a huge change across these. I think the chapters are in the same order for the most part. And really the biggest difference is that the 8th edition, it is better. It does have cooler looking visuals. It does have some more updated references, but the overall material is pretty much identical to these others. It's not like we found a new area of the brain that was hidden these past 10 years or whatever. But you will see that in the most updated version that is more modern in terms of its explanations for how the brain works and neuroimaging and things like that. All those things we'll be talking about in class, over the videos that I present for that. So don't feel like you have to spend too much money on the newest edition. It is okay to get an older edition. And by the way, you do not need to get any of the software that comes with this. I think that the textbook publisher always wants you to get the ZAP 2.0 or whatever it's called, some kind of software implementation that you have to pay extra for. You do not need that. You can get this completely used. You do not need to have any kind of special login or special code or any kind of disk or software or any of that stuff. If you found this copy laying in an alley, soaking wet, and it's been used by 30 other people, you can use that version. You do not need to get a new version. So it is okay to check for older used versions if you want to. I don't want you to have to break the bank. But also, like I said in that previous email, if you are like me and whenever you were in college were extremely tight on money, let me know and I'd be happy to find a workaround for you so that way you can get the textbook but not have to worry about ruining your monthly grocery bill or wherever that money would come from to pay for this stuff. If you are interested, I highly recommend also Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. We're going to be talking about Daniel Kahneman, who actually passed away not too too long ago. I used to require this book. I love this book a lot. It's technically popular psychology in terms of it is a pop science book. And I'm putting that in air quotes because that means that it is a book that anybody should be able to approach and read without any, you don't need a psychology degree, so you can give this to your parents and say like, hey, this is what I'm learning about this semester. And they would be able to read it and play along with it. But I don't assign it any longer because it is 500 pages. And how would you feel if I told you, hey, this textbook is required, but also this 500-page book is required? Students didn't like that I was doing that. So instead, what I've done is essentially kind of squeeze this down into like a chapter that we're going to cover this semester. So I recommend it maybe after the semester's over. If you want more reading about this stuff, this is a great place to start. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, not just because I'm self-absorbed, but because I think, at least for me, one of the anxieties that I would always have going into a class is, well, what is this professor like? I want to know more about that professor because I feel like that will help me understand the course expectations. So the classes that I teach are pretty firmly rooted in, those of you that are psych majors, in your course curriculum. You have the basic processes, and those include learning and adaptation in animal behavior and cognitive psychology and sensation and perception. Those are the kinds of classes that I generally teach, but I also teach a lot of the research methods sequence. So research methods 1, research methods 2, stats, and I also teach history and systems and a capstone course on memory that's also being offered this fall. So if you like this class, actually, well, there's going to be a good bit of overlap, actually. So, yeah, I don't know. Think about it. In the fall, I'm going to be teaching memory. I like that class a lot. It is a senior level capstone. And there will be a lot of ideas from this course that kind of translate very nicely into that one. But the reason why I want to tell you about these classes that I teach is because this tells you a little bit about my own perspective in coming to this material. So like this class is going to be taught essentially as if it is taught by somebody who teaches sensation and perception and who teaches research methods. There's not a lot, and I guess one of the things that I mean by that is that a lot of what we're going to be looking at is just basic processes. Here's how the quote-unquote average brain works. Here's how memory works. Here's how attention works. And we're not really going to get into, like, here's how attention and depression work, or here's how attention and schizophrenia works, just because psychopathology is not exactly my area of expertise. And indeed, you're going to see that it doesn't really come up all that much in the book, because what we're looking at is quote unquote basic processes. Cognitive psych is my specialty. I think I was actually hired at Westfield to teach cognitive psychology. That is my area. My PhD is in cognitive and behavioral sciences. And I've done a lot of research specifically on memory and attention, and so those are kind of like my big areas. But I also wanted to mention that I am receptive to feedback. So even though a lot of the stuff is kind of in my area of expertise, I love to hear from you, and I love to hear like, hey, I didn't understand this, or even better, hey, this is going a little bit too fast. Could you explain this a little bit better? Or there's too many videos. Could you give us more readings? No one ever says that. But that kind of stuff I'm always open to, because I am what you call a lifelong learner. I am constantly still taking classes. I'm even, like right now, I'm taking sociology classes and communications classes because I like to learn. But one of the things that I've learned from that is that we all have very different teaching styles and perspectives. And so I try to use the same things that I noticed as a student last semester when I was a student in a sociology class. If I see something that I'm like, hey, I like this idea, I want to use this in my own classes, I like to do that. But that means that I'm very sensitive to what you, the students, are experiencing. So if you feel like the workload is too much or whatever, let me know, because I know that from my perspective, I don't see this class the same way that you do. And so any kind of feedback that you have is always highly appreciated. I know that can be uncomfortable to tell a professor like, hey, you didn't do a good job explaining this. Could you explain it better? But I am not sensitive about those things. All right. The other thing is that this class is going to be a lot of work. Part of that is because this is a summer class, and because it is a summer class, we are taking 15 and a half weeks of content and squeezing it into 6.5 weeks of content, which means that we're roughly moving between 2 times as fast to 3 times as fast as normal. Most weeks you're going to have 3 chapters that you have to cover, which is about 3 times as fast as what we do in a normal semester. So just because this is a summer class, it is a lot of work because the speed is much faster than it was otherwise. But also if you were taking this over the spring or over the fall, it's still a lot of work because there are a lot of assignments. Part of my teaching philosophy is that I want you taking this over the summer online to have roughly the same experience that you would if you were taking this in person. So that means I don't cut any chapters. That means I don't cut any assignments. I want to make sure that you get your money's worth, that you get the same kind of education that you would be getting if you were taking this over the spring and in the fall. And so that means that every single chapter is going to have a quiz. Every single chapter is going to have a discussion. And as I mentioned, that there are 3 chapters a week usually, which means that there are three quizzes each week, 3 discussions each week. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's fewer. We'll go over that in just a little bit. So I don't want this. So even though this is going to be a lot of work, I don't want it to be especially hard work. So there are a lot of assignments. But I try not to be nitpicky about this kind of thing. I try not to be too specific. I'm not going to be asking you about dates. I'm not going to be asking you about specific people's names. I'm not going to be asking about those kinds of things, because honestly, after you graduate from here, or after you leave this class, you're not going to need to know a lot of those dates. You're not going to need to know a lot of those names. Instead, what I want to do is I want to test you on the things that I think you might need as a counselor, or as a clinical psychologist, as a social worker, or whatever your job is. I want to test you on those things, because those are the things that you'll need to know after you leave this class. So a lot of it is kind of like asking about applied stuff. How can you use this to increase memory, or how can you use this to identify deficits in language, for example. I'm not going to be asking you on an exam, what is the definition of language? Because that's just not you're not going to need to know that when you're a counselor. You'll need to know how to apply that stuff, but I don't think you'll need to know specific definitions and things like that. All right. So if you do feel like I am being tricky or nitpicky in these kinds of questions, like I don't like true false questions, for example, because I feel like true false is always tricky. I'm always able to convince myself out of the right answer for true or false. But if you feel like I'm being nitpicky, please let me know, because I don't want to be that, and I'd be very happy to talk with you about those things. So the way that I see our class is not oppositional. I don't see myself as an antagonist. Instead, I think of myself as being on your side. I would love every single person in this class, all 20 of you, to come out of this class with an A, or even an A plus if we offered such a thing. I think of myself as kind of like the coach, where I'm cheering you on. And even though I can't really get on the field with you and run those plays for you myself, I can give you all the tips and strategies in my own playbook to help you get there. So it's kind of like I want you to conquer or to beat this class's content. I want you to master this class's content, but I can't step out on the field and do that for you. I can't throw you the ball, but I can give you all the tools that I think are helpful and effective so that you can do that. So I want to give you everything that you need to ace the class, but I can't do that work for you. And that's kind of my teaching philosophy here. In terms of office hours, nobody cares. Moving on. Just kidding. But in terms of office hours, I know that's really hard over the summer. So I'm going to be on campus. I'm going to be over Zoom, but I know a lot of you are not going to be on campus. So the best place to reach me, just give me a heads up. I'm going to be on Zoom from 11 a.m. to noon every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But I know that those times don't work for everybody. So if there is a time, especially because over the summer, a lot of you are working full time. So if you, let's say the earliest time you can meet is 6 p.m. on a Sunday, just let me know. And I'd be happy to try to configure my schedule so that we can work something out. So, yeah, let me know. And if you want to meet in person, I'd be happy to do that too. Just give me a heads up, because otherwise I'm probably not going to drive all the way to campus and hang out in my office for an hour whenever nobody usually shows up to those things. So just let me know what works best for you. If you call this number, by the way, that is my office phone. Feel free to call it, because if you do and you leave a voicemail, that goes right to my email, actually. So it's a pretty effective way of getting a hold of me. But generally speaking, if you send me an email, which is how usually I think we all kind of prefer to communicate, but if you send me an email then I can get back to you within 24 hours. If you leave a note over Zoom or a message, sorry, not over Zoom, over Play-Doh, using that course message, the little inbox that Play-Doh gives you, that's totally fine. But I don't get those notifications usually until after 24 hours. So I can be a little bit slower to respond if you send it to me through Play-Doh. If you send it to me through my email, I get a notification of that immediately, and I can respond to you pretty quickly. All right. So let's talk about the grading breakdown. So here is your grade in a nutshell. We have exams counting for half of your grade, quizzes for about a fourth of your grade, online discussions for about a fourth of your grade, and then research assignments being about 10%. Let's look at each of these individually to see what they entail. So exams, half of your grade, they are all weighted equally, which means that you have, I guess if you want to think about it this way, then that means that that one exam accounts for about 12.5% of your grade. So really not all that much, but it's just enough that you don't want to miss one of these. If you miss one of these and take a 0 on it, that's 12.5% of your grade, which is a whole letter grade, right? So just be mindful of that. So they don't weigh that much, but together they weigh quite a bit. So there's 4 of them throughout the semester. They're a mix of multiple choice and short answer, usually about 22 multiple choice and about 5 short answer. And what I'm expecting there is about a paragraph. And anything is fair game for these exams. That can come from the textbook, it can come from the lecture videos that I make, it can come from the readings that I ask out of the textbook or whatever, which I guess right there, but I guess readings in terms of the research articles that are assigned, and even the things that we do as our online discussions can show up there. I will give you a study guide to help you kind of zoom in on the important topics. The final exam is going to be cumulative, but not a scary kind of cumulative. A cumulative that's more kind of like, tell me what you know about memory, like asking about these big, broad concepts. There will be a heavier focus on those last couple of chapters, though. The quizzes, these are going to be due. The the calendar for our class, the weekly routines, is that generally things are going to be due Sunday by the end of the day. And that's true for the exams, the quizzes, and the discussions. It's always going to be due Sunday by the end of the day. So so that way you can plan your weeks in advance and kind of know, like, all right, I know that Mondays are going to be my cognitive psychology days. Where, so that way you don't have to worry about, like, oh, if you have a busy family schedule, a busy work schedule that can be unpredictable, you have a full week to kind of think about where this class will fit into your week. I hope that you read ahead of the lectures. So, like, the reason why even though the quizzes are due at the end of the week, I hope that you don't wait until the end of the week to do those readings. I would recommend doing those readings and watching the videos for those chapters before you take the quiz. But if you're really pressed for time, you can absolutely probably open up the quiz, open up your textbook, and then try to figure it out. I think that because you have a whole hour to do this, and these are only 12 multiple choice questions, that gives you enough time to kind of look things up. And really what I want you to do with these quizzes is to just stay on top of the readings and to stay involved. And so that way it's not a big surprise whenever the exam comes up. You'll generally know what each exam is kind of looking for because you've taken these quizzes. These quizzes will also help you kind of assess your own learning for that chapter, where, like, if there is an area where you're like, oh man, I don't remember reading about that at all, then you and I can talk about that, and so that way you feel pretty good going into the exam for that. Is roughly based on the textbook, and yeah. So you shouldn't need to look at the videos to answer these questions. You should just be able to pull up your textbook for those. All right. In terms of discussions, those are all going to be posted on Plato. And generally, even though I call these discussions, I try to make them a little bit more interactive, where I'm going to try to give you some kind of basic cognitive activity. Maybe that's a memory test. Maybe it's an attention test. Maybe it's oh, there's a really fun one when we get to the language chapter where you try some speed reading exercises. But it'll be stuff like that, where you're trying to do something that we would have probably done in a classroom setting, but you overline online, and then talking about your experiences with those. So it's a chance for us to be hands-on, even though we're not in person for this classroom, and those are going to be due along with the quizzes at the end of the week. So 11:59 p.m. On Sunday. For full credit, I want you to provide a thoughtful response to a classmate, and I provided a rubric online to show you what that is. But basically, if you reply to a student, to a classmate, and you're like, haha, yeah, really makes you think. Now that you put it that way, I never realized that 2 + 2 = 4. How insightful. Like I said, I have been a student in online classes, and I know that that's like a really, like, if you just got to do, you just got to get credit for this discussion, and you're supposed to do a reply, and you do some kind of, filler type of response. I'm not interested in that because I'm reading all this stuff, and I don't want to read all this stuff that looks like you don't really care, So pay attention to the feedback that I give you for discussions, because, if you don't make 100%, I'll usually try to tell you what you might need, so you can make 100% on those. Also, so you'll get partial credit if you don't respond to a classmate, but also usually for full credit, I'm looking for you to make connections with other parts of our class, or with other parts of your degree, or your real world experience, where you're making connections and you're not just being like, oh, memory is tough, end, or whatever. All right. Research. The first one that we have is going to be very, very simple and straightforward. It's just like an icebreaker for chapter 1. And then the final piece that we have are research assignments. These are research quizzes that are going to be assigned throughout the semester. There are 5 short quizzes that come from research articles. They are about 12 questions. Half of them are going to be multiple choice. Half of them are going to be kind of like a really short fill in the blank, short answer type thing. And the reason why these are assigned is because this is a science class, and we're going to practice reading from scientific articles. It's going to help us kind of promote scientific STEM literacy, and this is like talking with psych majors. A lot of I know a lot of y'all are not planning on going into experimental or research, like kind of areas of psychology. But if you are going to be a counselor, if you're going to be a clinician, if you're going to be a social worker, if you are going to be anybody who helps other people, you will need to be able to like read the research to best know how to interact with your clients. You will. I was going to say, like, maybe if you wanted to, you could maybe just watch some TED Talks online or glean your info from social media like TikTok on how to be a good counselor. But would you want your counselor doing that? I don't think that you would want your counselor to be like, you know what? I saw this really effective therapy style on YouTube, right? Like, because then, like, if my therapist was telling me that, I'd be like, wait a second. Did he just watch a Mr. Beast video and is going to try to treat my depression with that? So that's why we're practicing reading these research articles. So we can't, like, is it hard? Yes. Is it very fussy and very specific at times, reading research? Yes. It does not come naturally. But this is one of the things that we have to do for our careers to get good at this stuff so that we can help others to the best of our ability. Other details, if you require any kind of accommodations, like through the Banaco Center or whatever, just let me know. I'm happy to work with you on those things. Just send me an email. The makeup policy here is that if you miss an assignment, it's just 10% off for each day late. So if you miss, one day, not a big deal. It just moves it from a 100 to a 90. But that does mean that, like, you don't want to go a full week overdue, right? Because a full week is 70% off, which can be devastating to your grade. So if you have any kind of concerns, like if you or you have a family member that's hospitalized recently, let me know as soon as you can, so that way we can work up a plan to get you caught up to speed. Yeah, so many times I feel like students get behind because they don't want to they miss a class, and then because they got family stuff going on and they don't want to reach out about it because they are worried that it's going to make them look bad or whatever. No, be proactive. Let me know, what can I do to help you out, so that way you don't get too far behind, because I don't want this stuff to penalize your grade too much. Finally, there is zero tolerance for plagiarism on these things. I am somebody who, I like ChatGPT. I like a lot of the generative language based AI systems. And I don't want to tell you, like, no, you shouldn't use those. But what I will tell you from a lot of experience looking at this last semester is that whenever people write their stuff, they're usually just using ChatGPT to do that. And what I've learned is that a lot of this stuff feels very empty and does not actually feel like it means anything. And so use it at your own discretion. I would say if you get stuck and you want to use ChatGPT, definitely use it as a way to point yourself in the right direction or to help yourself kind of structure arguments. But it's usually pretty clear whenever ChatGPT is like, if you were to ask ChatGPT, for example, about a really specific cognitive phenomenon that we're going to talk about in this textbook, is kind of a roll of the dice about whether or not it knows how to answer that stuff accurately. So just proceed with caution is what I'm saying here. But if you are going to plagiarize, you're going to pull from other sources, that is going to be a definite 0 from me. So just be careful with that. If in doubt, if you're worried, if you're like, hey, you opened up an exam and you wanted to try to answer something, but you weren't 100% sure, so you consulted an external source, cite that source. I'm not going to be upset with you if you cite that source. Please cite that source, because that's what researchers do. That's what experts do. They cite their sources. They say, hey, I didn't invent this form of therapy. These people did, right? So we all share acknowledgments on this stuff. We cite our sources, and I think that's good practice. So If you do, find an answer elsewhere and you're writing about it, then just say where you got it from, and it's no big deal. If you don't, then I get suspicious, and I'm like, did you try to play me for a fool? Do you think that I don't know, or whatever? So just avoid that, and cite your sources when you can. Don't forget office hours. I'm best reached through email, etc. All right, I know this has gone on a little bit long, this video, so I'm going to really quickly try to transition over here to our Play-Doh page, so that way you can kind of see. There are no announcements yet because I haven't opened it up yet, but this is generally what you should see. You should see this banner, Cognitive Psychology. Communications is just going to give you my office hours stuff, ways you can contact me. You'll see that I don't have like a spot where you can like send the Play-Doh inbox course messages, just because I'm not a huge fan of those. But if you do send those to me, then I can find them. But like I said, I encourage you to email me when possible, because it's easier for me to see that and to engage with you and to get back to you. The course calendar. Here's our course. You can see on the first week here, we don't have anything due. So at the end of this Sunday, you do not have anything due. But the next Sunday, you will have the chapter 1 materials due, along with the other chapters as well. So it can be good to go ahead and work ahead of schedule. Right now, I only have chapter 1 open, but midway through the week, I'm going to, after I finish putting these materials together, I will open up these others for next week, so that in case you want to work ahead of schedule, or if you have a vacation coming up that you know you're going to be away, that you can take care of those assignments a little bit early. What else? Grades. Okay, cool. You can see there are lots of grades here, right? There's one for every exam, for every discussion, for every quiz. So there's a lot. Syllabus and rubrics. This is self-explanatory. This is where you can find the syllabus and the discussion rubric that I was telling you about. I'm also going to post this video into this section down here. And then we have chapter 1. So every single chapter is going to have the same kind of flow, where I give you the lecture slides. So you'll see that. That's downloading. We got the chapter quiz. This is going to pull from both the textbook and the syllabus. And it's 60 minutes. And the discussion, as you can see here, is not even really cognitive psychology related. It's just tell me about yourself. So I'm going to put one of these two in the discussion forum as a getting to know you. Some of you I already know, which is great, but there's a lot of faces and a lot of names that I don't know. So I would love to know a little bit more about you, because we're going to be spending a pretty intense 6 weeks together. And then finally down here, we got the video that I made for this chapter. So every chapter is going to have a video where essentially I cover the lecture as if I were in the classroom, and kind of walk you through that material, so that way you're not left on your own to read this stuff and to learn it or solo. That this can be a nice way to, after you finish reading everything, watch this video. Maybe it clarifies some things. I don't know. Yeah, these are roughly going to be about an hour to about 90 minutes long. So they are a little bit long, but you can, for a lot of these, I've heard other students say like they will treat it like an audiobook almost, where they will like listen to it while they're doing chores or something like that, which is totally fine if you do it that way. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, actually, for the research quizzes, the first research quiz that we're going to have, which will be next week, is from this 2018 article, which is about object recognition. So it comes from chapter 4. I even put up a quick little explainer video for anybody who, after you read it, if you want to make sure that you got all the big points, then you can watch this video. But I would not recommend starting the quiz and then opening up this, because you only have 45 minutes to do this. And because a lot of these can be kind of hard to find or really tricky because it's a research article, I would definitely recommend skimming through this at the very least and watching the video before you tackle that research article quiz. The exam I have not posted yet, but you can find it in here. Oh, I posted the wrong thing. This is ignore this. It'll be gone by the time you access this this Play-Doh page. But I did post the first study guide that will be for the first exam already here. So if you want to, you can download the study guide and follow along with it while you're watching the lecture videos or while you're reading, so you can highlight, oh, this is an important part because it's mentioned in the study guide, and you can pay close attention to those specific areas. All right, I'm sorry this went on so long, but I wanted to make sure that you feel comfortable and knowing exactly what you've gotten yourself into this summer until June. Um, Please let me know if you have any questions. I would be so happy to talk with you, especially over the summer. I love hearing from students over the summer. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you later. Bye bye.